welcome to this special episode of Zapped to the Past. Graham's on holiday, so to fill in the time, we've done another of our special Zapped to the Past Goes Back to the Past retro special episodes. If you're not sure what these are, if you haven't listened to the first one, you should go and do that. But what we've done is we've gone back to that original of Zap 64, issues 1, 2, in this case, where there were a number of games that we didn't look at the time because we didn't know what we were doing. But we kind of want to cover everything that was covered in the main bulk of Zap. And we've got another 6 games for you that we didn't look at the time. So, Graham, tell us what those games are.
In this tightly packed school lunchbox containing NATO cut precision cheese single sandwiches, a single packet of no-frill salt and vinegar crisps, and the obligatory breakaway chocolate biscuit of a special episode, we head to the beach, only to find it's contaminated with politically facilitated radioactive seaweed. And guards. In Seaside Special, we get into more Neanderthal shenanigans and rowdy grog shouting in BC's quest for Tyres, and hop aboard our jet-powered aeroboat for a zoom around some floaty sticks in the watery Aqua Racer. Did you trade your breakaway biscuit for your mate's minty Viscount alternative? It's a fair trade. We also grab our huge hand gloves and best batting sticks as we head on the fields looking to smack some balls. In on-field baseball, go on a troll through 1,700 screens of yellow looking for a fancy rock in the flicky Almazz before finally popping on some sports shorts and a vest and heading into the power-thrusting event-strewn world of a judo master in the waggly Brian Jack's Superstar Challenge. Some of these older games certainly showed the newer games a thing or two about a thing or two. Not all of them, though. In there lies an egg of the dog.
All right. Okay. That sounds like fun. Let's waste no time. I know you're on holiday, and it's very good of you that you beamed in and gave us that sort of download on what they were going to be. But let's just get into it. There's no point spoiling. There's no cover to look at. We've done all that before. Let's get into the very first game. Okay, and we'll get into our first game. Our first game is over to you, Graham, in this retro look back. This is Seaside Special. Tell us all about Seaside Special.
It was 39 years ago when this was released.
Ooh, that's a long time.
Let the Seaside Special shine a light on you. £6.90 is an odd price. This was how much it was.
That is an odd price.
61% it scored in Zapparoo back in issue whatever.
Issue 1. This is issue 1.
Numero uno, the big man, number 1. This is published by Task Set. There weren't many people publishing games. This was one of the very first publisher sets around that time, sort of, the smaller ones, as it were. Concept is AJ Gibson. Gibbo. The coder was Tony Gibson. Gibbo. And graphics were Mac Harrison. Harrow. And the musician was Tony Gibson, not related to the other Gibsons. That's ironic, but they're not. That's just they're the 3 Gibbs. They were going to be the Bee Gees, but they weren't. One wasn't called Barry and Benny and whatever the other one was called. Anyway, so this is by Gibson, and Harrison, which is also, ironically, the law firm they set up after this for when they got real jobs. So this is an odd thing. This very heavy on message. Save the trees, give a hoot, don't pollute, kind of thing. Tory Party are evil. Just so you know. Well, in this case, we know what we know now. In this case, you've got to grab the radioactive seaweed from the shores of the beach while avoiding the jellyfish, crabs, and guard, who will do their best to stop you. Get hit and you lose a life, lose 3, and you're dead meat. Collect 12 seaweeds and you could escape the beach shore scene and head to Downing Street in London to throw your collected seaweed at the alien politicians to you and me. Hit them 5 times to see them run away. This is all because of pollution, Adrian. Nuclear pollution on our shores, which is turning the seaweed into radioactive seaweed, and it's all bad. The seaweed collection part of the game sees you running around a beach shore scene, not dissimilar to Crab Beach, I thought.
I thought it was similar to Crab Beach as well.
Which was a game that Adrian and I devised during a game jam one time.
It was, made it in 24 hours.
Actually, it's a good game, that. So maybe we'll post that for the patrons somewhere, or link to it. I think it's available somewhere.
Yeah, it's on
anyway, because I did the sound, you did the code, and my son Edward did the graphics, didn't he, for us?
Did the sprites and stuff, yeah.
Did the sprites, yeah. Anyway, I digress. So, and in this game, you collect seaweed from the beach, the waves roll in and leave a number of seaweeds to collect. All polluted, though, by the nuclear power plant. You need to run around and collect them while avoiding the baddies. They will also follow you or shoot at you if they see you, and you need to move fast because they're pretty accurate. There's also some rocks at the bottom of the screen where you can hide if necessary. And once you've got 12 seaweeds, you can then run down to the bottom right to exit, go onto the Downing Street level. Here, a 1984 version of Downing Street, complete with grey blocks for bricks and the blue door. Looks okay, actually. appears with large windows. In these, some familiar of their time-looking politicians will pop up. You are a large sprite and run along the bottom, hurling the seaweed at them. Hit them, and you'll progress with the next beach level, having more rocks, more enemies in the form of bouncing crabs, and more challenges. While on the beach levels, you can also throw the seaweed at the enemies because that will stun them or kill them outright, but you can't hold on to the seaweed for too long because it's radioactive, you see. It makes you start glow in the dark. And so you've got like a radioactive sort of meter at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And if you hold on to it too long, well, it ain't going to end well, is it? You're going to grow an extra arm or death. It's one of those games that's very of its time, this, and simple. Not terrible, though. There's limited fun to be had, I suppose, but, it is of its time. And it plays pretty fast if you go with it. The graphics are okay for 1984. The shore effect was with the water worked quite well, I thought. And while the sprites are a bit basic, they do run around at a pace, and it's all pretty good fun, all said and done. I don't remember having this, though I did read that it was on the 30 Games compilation, along with Astral Zone, Cosmic Convoy, Milky Way, Phase 4, Detective, Robo City, Invasion, Micro Mouse, Orion Quest, Poster Paster, Gyropod, Quantic Warrior, Valley, Transector, 3D Tunnel, Bozo, Demon Knight, Jammin', Savage Pond, oh my gosh, Lander, Seaside Special, of course this one, Time Zone, Strontium Dog, Super Gridder, 20 Tons, Schizophrenia, sounds like I laugh that one, Pipeline, Up and Away, Bismarck, and Escape. Solid gold compilation, that I don't doubt. I thought for an odd price of £6.90, all right, weird, but for a 1984 game, it's heavy on message, it actually is pretty harmless fun, all said and done. Nothing too terrible about it. It's not like it's a hard game to get into and sort of crack on with. I found it was all right. Just it is what it is. It's very simple. It's a bit daft, and it's written by someone that clearly had a thing about a strong dislike of the Conservative Party in the UK government, and particularly Margaret Thatcher at the time. Probably wasn't alone back in those days. But either way, this is a game that's sort of a fun arcade type tradition. I thought it was all right. 61% from them. I don't know what the scoring criteria and how it worked. It's probably about right. It's nothing great, but it's a playable enough game as long as you go with it. It does get a bit samey, though. What about you?
Yeah, pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, a bit of politics in your games. And this entry from 1985 is certainly not shy. It's actually 1984 it came out, but obviously reviewed in the first issue, is not shy in aiming its radioactive seaweed at the incumbent Tory party at the time. The notion of reaping radioactive seaweed from a contaminated beach and then heading over to Downing Street to lob it through the windows of number 10. Not the subtlest of commentaries I've ever seen, but I do admire its commitment to the cause. Tony Gibson, by the way, did quite a few games. Did Ghetto Blaster, Jammin', Jammin' 2.
Jammin', I knew there was one that this reminded me of in a way.
Yeah, so he did, quite a lot. He also did one in 1989 we may have to see called Rainbow Warrior, which looks quite interesting. Look at the screenshots. Cool. As for the game, it's okay. Yeah. It got a bit drab after a while. It just gets a bit samey, doesn't it? It's two screens.
Yeah.
You're kind of running around one. I can't help but feel that if the aim was to get rid of the Tories, making it so hard to do so was almost counterproductive to the theme behind it, or something maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, true.
Some nice visuals like I've noted. I quite like the sea effect, the way it's going back up and down, and I thought it reminded me of Crab Beach as well. And I like the way that your little guy runs on at the start and sort of spells out the name of the the game in the sand. I've got some nice little touches to it. And yeah, some of the politicians were recognisable, and the night sky and everything, and the sort of big sort of nuclear power plant with the big death sign on it in the background was. Yeah. It's not subtle, but it is actually okay. But for 1985, I think it looks okay. It just gets a bit too samey after a few minutes play. It's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. And there's, I know the layout on the beach turns a bit and the crab turns up and there's bits and stuff, but the actual what you got to do doesn't really change that much. And so it just got a bit samey. But I think 61% is about right. It's okay. It's perfectly fine and a bit of fun, and nice to see the Tories being poked at. There we go. Seaside Special. Let's move on to our next one. And that one is BC's Quest for Tyres. BC's Quest for Tyres. Simpler times, Graham. BC's Quest for Tyres was originally released in 1984 and is it's the first one, so it's the one before BC2, Grog's Revenge. You remember that? Where you're going around on your unicycle, climbing up a mountain while some guy just appears around shouting grog, and you're collecting clams.
Yep.
We looked at that way back in episode 2, part 2. So going back some time there. But this then was the first game based on the comics of Johnny Hart. Those comics are simply titled BC, and they've been in various publications since 1958. The comics are the story of a group of cavemen, women, and animals and dinosaurs in the prehistoric era, and the games do a pretty good job of representing them in digital form. This first take on the idea has you controlling Thor. He's one of the characters in the comic, and he's on his unicycle, and he has to travel through 9 dangerous locales in order to rescue his girlfriend, Cute Chick, who has been kidnapped by a dinosaur. That's it, really. Some of the levels are longer than others, with some being a simple one-screen thing to overcome. And in all fairness, it's rather like Moon Patrol, but without anything shooting at you. So, that's kind of what this is. The game scrolls from left to right, and you control Thor as he proceeds across the landscape. Left and right on the joystick move you left and right on the screen. You're constantly moving, so it's a constant sort of auto-scroller. So left and right move you on the screen itself. Up is to jump, and down makes you duck briefly. Okay. You can use both of these moves to combine. So if you're moving left and right, with moving left and right, and this is needed to get past the various obstacles. So when you duck, you need to sort of go duck and then forward to get under them, because you don't duck long enough to get under the obstacles. So when you're playing it, and same with jump, you can jump and then move to the right, so you jump further. It's actually a control scheme that works quite well, and it's sort of, we've seen other games where we've talked about stupid mighty bounds. I quite like these games where you can control yourself in the air. It's a game. Let me play it that way. It doesn't have to be you're jumping so you can't move yourself. I like that. Don't matter. If you hold fire and move left to right, then you slow down or speed up respectively. So you got to go faster at some points or slower at others. The screen is mostly made up of the game world, so there's quite a lot of most of the screen is scrolling, which is quite good to see. And the UI is at the bottom. This shows the number of wheels left, which is your lives. It shows your present speed, your score, and the high score. Nice and simple. You don't need anything else. There's not a lot else to this game. So number of lives, how fast you're going, and that's just represented by a number. So it's just number. It starts at 10 and then goes up or down depending. There's nothing fancy here. So because the visuals just are pretty simple, but they do their job. Thor himself is a decent sized sprite, but there's little animation. So there's not really much animation, maybe a little bit on the wheel, but there's nothing on really him. Although there's some nice parallax scrolling in the backgrounds as you trundle along with the mountains and clouds moving at different speeds. So, that's all right. The levels themselves all run together. So it's continuous. There's no break in the levels. It's just a continuous run. And first of all, it sees you jumping over rocks and holes in the ground. Then you go into a forest where you've got to duck under the trees, tree branches, and you've got to jump over some logs. Then you're blocked by Fat Broad, which is a bit of a, it is what it is. We know it's not good, but it's obviously taken from the comics, which were whatever. You have to time a jump across a pond across turtles' backs and avoid her hitting you with a club. Once you get past there, it's uphill. There are more holes and there's rocks on the hillside, but there's also tumbling rocks, which you have to sort of time to jump over at the same time as going over the stationary ones. At the top of the hill, it's back jumping over logs and rocks, and there's a sort of bird appears above you, and then there'll be a big hole will appear sort of over a lava pit, and you've got to jump up to grab onto the passing bird. It's nice and easy. You just jump up, grabs it automatically, and you get a little sound tune, and Thor has a big grin on his face. He's dead happy with himself. Once you get past that, you head downhill, picking up speed, avoiding stuff to jump over a large water pit, which again, you just press fire and you jump over that. These things, they count as a level. Like I said, some of them are single screen bits. If you get past that, you jump over the water pit, then you've got to avoid falling rocks, like coming from from the sky, so as if like a volcano has erupted, and then you jump past a dinosaur who's blocking another lake, trying to sort of hit out. You get past them, you go through a cave, jumping and ducking past stalactites and stalagmites, and if you get past them, you've done it, and you get a kiss from Cute Chick. You get a big sort of love heart sort of floats across the screen, all very nice. And then you get to do it again at a faster speed. Repeat. That's it. It's very simple. It does feel very reminiscent of modern 2-day endless runners in the fact of, you're moving along, jumping, ducking. It's very similar. Things like Cannibalt and 1,000 other mobile games that do this. This is not... So... And sort of reading around, this kind of sort of has been reappreciated as maybe one of the first, if not the first, sort of endless left to right runner, because it just keeps going. And it is one of those. We've said some other games that were like it, but this is simply one of them. You duck, you jump, you move faster, you go over objects, you jump. That's it. Off it goes. Just you have an end, and then you go back to the beginning, and it just loops. It's not terrible. It's just a little bit on the dull side. It's not without its simple charms and visuals. Some of the aspects, though, have not aged well, but it did entertain for a few minutes, so it's got to be worth something. I didn't mind this, so I enjoyed time playing with it. Like I said, some of the bits have aged badly. I wish they'd changed the name. Fat Broad doesn't stand up these days. I get it that was probably that had their genesis in 50s and 60s America, which, that kind of humor would have been acceptable and the thing to sort of have. It doesn't work now. I'm not even sure it worked in the early 90s. Maybe it did in the early 1980s. Maybe in America it was still the thing and they were just trying to be, but it doesn't work now. And that's a bit, it's a bit of a shame. And, if you play it now, it's not going to offer much, but I could see it. It got 59%, 57%. That's probably about right. It's a bit on the simple side, but it entertained for a few minutes. That's about it, really. You got anything you want to add on to it?
It is what it is. I didn't play it for long, I have to say. I couldn't quite get it into it. I like the idea of these sort of games. These early ones they keep it simple very well. And it was nice to know the genesis of the BC thing, because that was a bit of a mystery in the
we didn't look it up, did we?
First. So we kind of put the second one first. Interesting credits for this, wasn't there? Software Projects presents Sierra Online as well. Bit unusual, all that. And I guess it's sort of one of those they did a lot of these multi-screen, multi-event, progression type games back then, didn't they? Nothing terrible. It's very early game type, I guess. Like you said, crossing the turtles, tricking the woman and doing that, crossing the lava and all that, grabbing the, they're just, I guess they are what they are. And the graphics I thought were okay. They've gone for that kind of, I don't know, it is quite basic. And I suppose it's cartoonish. It's very early of that type. So there's not a lot of what you call detail in anything. But no, I suppose it functions well. It's always fun to see the old Commodore font showing up on things like this, isn't it? And it has this sort of funny comments. I don't know. The only thing I take from these things is I want them to be funnier than they are. And I guess it's just I just don't get it. I don't. I'm not a fan. I don't know anything about them. I suppose if I was following this, if this was some character that I had a lot of affinity for, I'd probably think it was a lot more of it. But it is, it's quite sparse as it goes, but it isn't terrible, is it? It's certainly not bad. So I thought it was, for what I played, which wasn't a massive amount of it, I have to say, but I thought it was all right for its time. I've seen a lot worse games in 1989. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's doing what it does, maybe not perfectly, but it's doing it pretty well, and that's good enough at this time. It's good enough.
I forgot to mention it was coded by a guy, Charles Benton, who, according to Moby Games, did the original version. I think the original version was an Atari 8-bit, and there's a ColecoVision version in 1983. So I think the Commodore 64 was a later
all fun and games, that.
Yeah, but I think I'm just reading his bio. I think he went on to do something with Leisure Suit Larry. Yeah, which is weird. Anyway, but I don't know. So there you go. Yeah, there's BC's Quest for Tyres. It's okay. It's very much of its time and is what it is.
It is what it is, what it is.
That's it, yeah. So that's that one. Right, let's move on to our next one. Okay, so on to our next one. This is Aqua Racer. This was from, I think this is the last, this might actually be the last one, I think, from issue 1 of Zzap.
Okay.
It's the last one we've got from issue 1 of Zzap. I think we've hit all the rest now. So issue 1 of Zzap now is completely done once we looked at Aqua Racer.
Fair enough.
So we're on to issue 2 next after this sort of thing. Anyway, Aqua Racer, this is £6.99. This got 66% back in issue 1. This came from Bubble Bus. I'm not sure what that means. Bubble Bus? Bubbly Bus. Bubble Bus.
Bubble Bus. Bubble Bus.
If it's got 3 consonants, it's fair game for the Calabos song.
Sorry, it is. Bubble Bus. Calabos.
This was coded by Richard Clark. Richard Clark.
Richard Clark. Yeah, all goes. We haven't done it in a while either. We haven't had that in a while.
No, it's good to bring it back. This was coded by Richard Clark. He did Wizard's Lair.
Okay.
Which was interesting enough. But before that, he did this twitchy pole position knockoff.
He did.
Where the cars are replaced by boats and usable controls are replaced by the twitchiest of sensitive nightmares. So yeah, this puts you in control of a speedboat powered by a giant fan. I thought it looked.
Yeah, so it's one of those aerofoil type thing.
Yeah, it's one of those boats from Live and Let Die.
Yeah, one of the ones they use in the swamps in the Florida Everglades.
And I believe so. Yeah, rather than a standard speedboat, so not an engine, a fan.
Yeah.
And it looks like one of them anyway, because it looks like one. Anyway, when the game loads, there's a funky title screen, some scrolling character graphics in the background, funky, really funky, and a tune that's not great but not terrible for the time. Thinking back to beginning of mid 1985, we're not into good tune territory, but it was okay. It's not terrible. didn't hurt my ears too much. We've got some options. We can opt to play the game. We can have a practice or watch a demo. But don't watch the demo, as it's rubbish. It just crashes all the time.
Yeah, that won't help you.
Although, actually, that's pretty representative of the game.
Yeah.
So actually, the demo is pretty good, I thought. Anyway, practice mode allows you to take on any of the game's 20 courses without the hindrance of other boats. Not that that will really help you on anything beyond course 5 or 4 or 3. And finally, you can play the game, which is the real deal here. So you want to go play the game. Here, you set the number of players, enter their names, and off you go. First off, you've got to qualify. So it's pole position. Think pole position on the water. That's what you got here. Because you've got to qualify, you've got 1 minute and 30 seconds to get around the course. Controls are simple enough, with up to go faster and back to go slower. Pretty easy. Fire changes the gear from low to high to allow you to go even faster. You can get up to 100, I think it's 110 kph, knots, miles per hour. I don't know. You can get to 110 somethings or other. I wouldn't recommend going that fast because it gets very twitchy. Left and right don't so much as steer you as flick your boat wildly from side to side, usually into an oncoming boat or pole at the side of the course. That's generally what happens here. As this is water, everything is blue, and the layout is marked out by poles on either side of the course. So you've got these sort of poles moving in 3D towards you, and that's what you don't want to hit. Should you hit one of these or one of the other boats on the course, then you crash and sink and lose time. Time that is needed to qualify. You get 1 minute 30 to qualify, basically. If you do not get round the course in the time allotted, it is game over. That's it. Game over. Done. You're done. You're out. Okay. If you do, then you proceed to the first proper course, and that's it. Really, it's repeated with a time limit and so on. There's other boats on the course, are both in qualifying and in the main game, and they do their best to just drive into you. They're not trying to do anything other than just get in your way. They are nightmare things on the course, and it's really twitchy, and the gaps you have to go through are quite narrow, and you'll end up crashing. You crash so much, you're still crashing. The graphics are a bit flickery. Nothing moves very smoothly. It's all a bit flickery and a bit sort of jerky, and I didn't think the 3D was that great. The poles at the side of the course kind of jump out at you. You get bigger in the sort of sprite scaling routine. And the other, like I said, the other boats, this is programmed to hit you. They're not trying to drive in anything. They're just moving to your way, which is annoying. Your boat, as I said, lurches from side to side, and I didn't really find any enjoyment to be had here in trying to get through the courses. Collision with anything that moves is inevitable, and this quickly leaves you feeling very frustrated and annoyed, and the whole twitchy, blocky mess had me reaching for the off switch pretty quickly. This got 66%. I think that's too high, even for back then. I think there's better games that we've played. Things like Up and Down, put this into shame this into a cocked hat. This was not a winner for me, I really didn't enjoy this. It was a twitchy mess to play. How did you find it? Did you get any enjoyment from being an Aqua Racer?
Aquatic pole position on an airboat.
Yeah, that's
whatever they call them. I like the idea of it. Presentation of the game, though, was a bit troubled, wasn't it? Steering, though, wasn't clear, was it? It was just hard to... They made it hard to play.
Yes.
Needlessly hard. The marker things made it incredibly difficult to ascertain where you actually were heading and what was in front of you at any point, and bends and turns were just a mystery, really. Mm-hmm. And the competitors were crap. They just drove into you all the time. They didn't really want to win. They just didn't want you to.
Yep.
The main sprite is boat-like, I guess, airboat-like. Background details, well, it moved pretty fast for a racing thing. And I suppose, there's a lot of text on the top of the UI, though, wasn't there? And the graphics under that were a bit less convincing.
Yeah.
I suppose it was made ages ago. Zzap gave it 66% in issue 1, with some notes about making the track or what constitutes a track a bit clearer. And I have to agree with that. The problem with this game is it's set on the water, fine, but it just doesn't feel like you know where you're going. It doesn't give you the enough visual cues to help you with that.
No.
But what it does have, I suppose, if you're going to think about it in terms of its context and time, it does have kind of an arcade value to it in terms of its speed and its view. What it isn't is Bob's plummy game, and it's not that. It is trying to be a bit more arcade looking and a bit more fast and a bit feature rich.
It is, but I just don't think it does it very well.
No, it's not. Its implementation, like I said, it's troubled. But I think it was trying to be a bit more than your average game at around that 1984 or 5 time, I guess. But it's just pole position in the water. It's just, I don't know, pole position didn't work that well on the land. So no, it's just, I don't think it quite works in the way they wanted. The effect is a bit like that Night Racer, isn't it? In the Atari game Night Driver, is it?
Yes, it's exactly like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But on water that doesn't work. It's just plain not working.
And when you get the sort of arrows coming past at the side to tell you there's a corner coming, they go they're past you so fast you can barely.
It's what I mean.
Them.
You can't. There isn't enough space, time, and wherewithal in the game to give you the directions and control you need to play a game like this. So it doesn't work.
You're too twitchy in control. If you'd have been a bit less twitchy,
yeah. It is very twitchy and a bit, and like I said, all the enemy opponents just seem to do is want to just crash into you all the time. So they just steer towards you and every opportunity, which is like, okay, not really where I want to do it. So no. I don't know. It was $6.99 on it, weirdpricing.com, but it didn't quite work for me, I'm afraid, Aqua Racer. So
no. Not for me.
Not my favourite thing we played from that issue 1.
Certainly not, though. There you go. That's our roundup. That's issue 1 out of the way. Don't say we're not anything if completionist. We've done issue 1 now. Let's move along to issue 2. Graham, we're covering some of the games that we missed out there. This is the first one. This is On-Field Baseball. How did you get on with this?
It is. God, this was released in 1983, apparently.
It was.
Published by GameStar, or I think this one was it Activision, I think, ultimately. Coded by John A. Fitzpatrick, graphics by John A. Fitzpatrick, musician by John A. Fitzpatrick. This was by John A. Fitzpatrick. I think we can all agree on that.
I think you can.
It's also known as Star League Baseball in some areas. I guess that was a US name.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
It wasn't, it's a baseball game, obviously. And I think it must be one of those baseball games where it talk about releasing your game at the wrong time. Because this came out, I think, about a week after Imagine's World Series Baseball, and World Series Baseball was pretty good. And I remember we liked it. I think we reviewed that back in episode 1 or 2. It was one of the early ones,
quite early, yeah.
And we liked it. We said it was pretty good, although it was rock hard, but it was pretty good. So this is another baseball game. It's not an altogether unpleasant game to play, though I found it for ages next to impossible to hit the damn ball. I went into practice thinking, I better have a practice swing off you, and I could not. I maybe hit the ball 5 times out of 100 goes. It's really weirdly, I don't know why it's so difficult to hit it, but it is. I think it's the angle you're trying to hit it from and the distance. Because this is like watching baseball being played from 7 miles away from the actual field.
yes,
but anyway, it's baseball, so it plays like a baseball game. You have innings, there's both pitching and fielding teams, and you go into bat. The object is to obviously run around the pitch and to go past all the points, so you can get a home, not a home run, but you get round and you score the points, whatever they call that. Each batter gets 3 attempts. It's baseball, I don't need me to tell you the rules of baseball. This plays out in the pitch is shown from the left side, so the batter / umpire on the left hand side with the pitcher in the middle, and you hit out to the left or to the right, but in kind of a sort of a face-on view. So it's almost a 2D view of a 3D space. So it's played out across the field. It's not isometric, but it's that. I guess
it's like a camera up in the sort of stadium.
Well, in a stadium, but not this one you're in. It's the one about 10 miles down the road. So the window contains an entire view of the field, which is quite a nice idea. And though the players are pretty much person-shaped pixel clusters, they do, I suppose, at least look like someone swinging a bat or running around. The computer team has the early game curse of being utterly infallible, though. Mm-hmm. So if you play them, you will lose unless you are absolutely perfect at this game, and that's a bit of a shame. So don't expect to get very far in this if you play it single player. 2-player, probably a bit more fun if you go with it. It is 1983. But I thought it's quite fast in the way it runs. There's a lot of good ideas in there, and there is a baseball game in there, and it does look the part, albeit that it's tiny, tiny, tiny little baseball players from space. But at least they're there. It was reviewed in issue 2 of Zzap. It did pretty well, considering it was just after Imagine's World Series Baseball. It's not a fair comparison, really, as the sprites here are a lot more basic, and the game controls equally so. But you can play a game of baseball, and there's enough options to keep you going. I couldn't even hit the ball, so I can't speak to how well this would play out in an actual game. So I don't know. I think there's probably better ball games around on the system right now on that time. So I think you'd probably be looking at this and comparing this to World Series Baseball going, I think I'll go for the Imagine one. And $10.99 is pretty pricey for what it is as well. But Zzap scored it at 73% back in issue 2. I can see why they did that. It's not a terrible, terrible game. And you can play baseball. I just think that it's one of those games that's you've got hardball and stuff to come later, which is way better than any of them. But to this point, there was this way of playing these games. They made these games in tiny, tiny little pixel people played from miles away, and because they want to get the whole pitch in. And it's kind of that not thinking that you can break the game space up and parts of the game view into different areas on the screen. You don't have to try and cram everything in. You can break the game up a little bit, which is what World Series Baseball does in certain essences, doesn't it? And so in that essence, it's all in one, okay, but it's all right, competently put together, but the computer players are very, very, very difficult to beat. And there's probably better baseball games out at that time already. So I don't know how much mileage it would get. But I didn't hate on it. I just found it not as good as perhaps some of the others that we've played at that time, particularly the World Series Baseball. What did you think?
Yeah, Stickman Baseball from 1983 that's okay for what it is, I guess. I think there's some fun to be had in this. I did actually like the full field view. I quite like that. Yeah. It's okay. It just, there you go. You're playing on here. You can see everything. The options, there are some options open for bowling and the lights. You can do fast balls and slow balls, high balls, low balls. So there is some decent stuff there, I guess. It does feel very dated, though, even at this point. And as you said, with hardball coming out since, this has long since lost its place.
Could you hit anything?
Did I hit? Yes. Yeah, I did hit something. I didn't get round, but I did hit a few. Yeah. It was reviewed at the same time as Imagine's baseball game, and that had the big screen thing going on, didn't it, along with the stick man? So it had that. So it was felt a little bit more oppressive. This was okay, but nothing more. Interestingly, sort of thing I noticed was that it was reviewed issue 2. Not that we're really knocking, because obviously they do a lot of stuff, but Lemon 64, which obviously usually lists the magazine reviews. I don't know whether it doesn't list the review of the Zzap review of it.
No, I noticed that. I had to go to a different page for some of the information.
Yeah, but it's got it on Championship Baseball, which was the sequel, saying that the Zzap 64 reviewed Championship Baseball in issue 2, gave it 70%, but just it didn't.
You could probably notify them and there's an error there and they'd correct it. They're pretty cool.
But it just needs to go to the other one. But if you're listening to this, there you go. You can do what it is. It's no big deal. It's just on the wrong one. They are linked. But there you go. So it was okay. It's just of its time, isn't it? It's an early baseball. It's a 1983 baseball game, and I think for a 1983 baseball game, it's actually pretty good. But it was superseded quickly, or not too quickly, but it was superseded since. But it's what it is. There you go. That's on-field baseball. Let's carry on with more games from issue 2. All right, and our next game, Graham, tell us all about Almazz.
Almazz, 38 years ago, 1985, published by The Edge. Not the popular guitarist from U2, though.
Such a shame.
995, 70% it got in issue 2.
Issue 2, yeah.
This was created by Andrew Green. He actually went on to do loads of stuff for Gremlin, Andrew Green. He did Bounder, Future Night, and all that sort of stuff.
He did, yeah.
And the musician was also Andrew Green. He went on to do loads of stuff for Gremlin, Andrew Green, Bounder, Future Night, that sort of stuff. I'm guessing this must be one of Mr. Green's first games. It's very buggy, tonally horrible, and graphically inept.
Don't hold back.
The story sees you on a quest across the African plains, looking for the Almazz diamond. You have 40 days to do this, and that means walking or jogging around 1,700 screens looking for it. Mm-hmm. They liked the daunting prospects, didn't they, back then? Yeah. Dotted around is some token scenery and locals who will throw spears at you, and that's that. The main chunk of the screen is the game window, such as it is, and this scrolls, jerks, or flickers, actually in my instance, as you walk or run or jog around. You always constantly walk in this game, and if you move the joystick, it makes him run or jog. So you can sort of speed yourself up, but if you do that, it uses up your water supply, and in the heat of the plains, it's not going to end well if you do that, is it? You are armed with a pistol and a limited supply of bullets.
Wait. Stop a minute. Hang on, sorry, stop me a moment. That was the running speed when you moved?
You walk, and then when you press it to the right, that's running.
I thought that was just walking.
No.
Oh, God. I was looking for the run key for ages.
No, there isn't one. It's always walking, but you can make it run.
Wow.
Yeah. So your number of bullets, the time of day, lives, as well as, I don't know, there's something that's indicated in the stuff below the game window. Not all of it's obvious. The whole thing is a jerky, buggy mess. Clearly there's a big ambition and there's a big map, which means the game is probably also, because of the flickery bugs I encountered, not working properly. And maybe this is a problem in the version we had. It could possibly be. I didn't find another version. I doubt it, though. These older games tend to be, cheaper games to be a bit buggy. Uh-huh. The music for this is something you'll need to switch off very quickly. Yeah. Because it's dire and it drills into your brain hole. Most of the screen is green with sporadic yellow stains, yellow and brown trees and brown buildings. You'll come across the occasional lion or animal. Maybe it's a lion, maybe it's an animal, a log or two. But the prospects of wandering around 1,700 screens of this crap, well, it sounds like you open the box and Pinhead appeared to me. You open the box, we came. I'm just looking for the Almazz diamond. Not anymore, you're not. Don't try and run away. You can't for long. It's awful. I mean, all right. I'm trying to be kind because it's old. It's an old game. So 38 years old, probably the guy's first game. But, I mean, and if that bug wasn't present in it, which made it flicker uncontrollably and horribly, if that bug wasn't there, and maybe that's a bug of emulation, it still wouldn't be that enticing to just wander around. Nobody wants to wander around a desert for 1,700 screens looking for a diamond. That's boring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the first of, and it's interesting that this guy went on to do loads of stuff for Gremlin, where they became later famous for games where you wander around aimlessly looking for stuff. The irony, the beautiful irony. So I didn't like it at all. I don't think it deserved 70%. I think they were being crazily generous, really. But I don't know. Maybe it was quite innovative at the time. Certainly wasn't for me. I didn't like it. And I did try and take the bug out of it and think, well, okay, without the bugs, would it be any good? I don't know. Is it something different, though, for 1985? Is this a big adventure game and I'm missing the point of it?
No, it's a knockoff Quo Vadis, which The Edge also released.
So it's clearly something to do with that. Nice box art, though. All right, I'll give it that. Everything else, I didn't think much of it. I certainly would never have given it 70%. But did you like Almazz?
No, troubling and boring are not the best options for a game to go back to.
Did yours bug out, or was it just me?
Oh, it was buggy and glitchy, and I've watched videos, and they're buggy and glitchy as well. So it's just a buggy and glitchy game. It's very dull, glitchy wanderathon. It may be big, as you said, 1,700 screens, but by God, it's dull. Trying to find the Almazz diamond was just incredibly tedious. And being a white, I'm just going to go for it. Being a white explorer, being attacked by grass skate wearing, spear wielding Africans and just shooting them down. Yeah. It's just not something I wanted to partake in. So I turned this off pretty quickly. One to forget for sure, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Like, Jesus, tonally, this is awful.
Yeah, put it in the bin. Put it in the bin.
I mean, yeah, just ugh. Anyway,
you paid 10 quid for it.
No, I wouldn't. I didn't.
That's a lot of money back then as well.
It would have been. It would never have been something that would have appealed to me. As soon as it said 1,700 screens, I'd have been like, "You're having a laugh."
Well, we've said this before. It's not 1,700 screens. It's just, it's the same thing over and over again. It's just slight variations of yellow on the screen.
Yeah, it was all yellow.
It's all yellow and green. Brown.
Yeah, dreadful, awful game. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's speak of Almazz no more.
No more.
And let's move on to our last game for this special, where we've gone back. That game is Brian Jack's Superstar Challenge. This was $8.95. This got 78%. In comparison to Almazz, is 70%. There's something gone badly wrong. This was from Martech. Princely sum of £8.95, and this is Brian Jack's Superstar Challenge. Who is Brian Jacks, and what's all this Superstar Challenge malarkey? Well, I'm going to tell you. Brian Jacks was a British judoka, which means a practitioner of judo. I have learnt something today.
Yes,
I've never heard that word. I knew he did judo. I just never heard the term judoka.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
I never heard that term before. So I've learned that is somebody who practices judo.
Wow.
He was also the first British person to win a medal at the World Championships, getting a bronze in 1967, and then he got another bronze at the Olympics in 1972. And there you go. However, he later became pretty famous in the UK for his performances on the BBC sports show Superstars. For those who do not know what that is, Superstars was a sports competition in which elite athletes of the day from a variety of different sports competed against each other in a lot of different events. The athletes could not compete, though, in the sport for which they practiced as their profession. So if there was a running event, then if you were a sprinter, you couldn't go in that one.
Yeah, you might be advantaged in that.
Yeah, exactly. Points are awarded for the position in which the competitor placed in each event. This is from the wiki, by the way. The competitor with the most points at the end of all 10 events was declared the champion. This originated in the US and was then sort of ported over. We've got basically made a version in the UK in 1973. It also had what I can rightly say is one of the best theme tunes as well of the 70s. I used to love the theme tune to this. In fact, I still do. It's a great theme tune. Fantastic. Brian Jacks became pretty legendary for his scores in the gym parts of the show, where he did 100 parallel bar dips in 60 seconds.
Crikey.
And 100 and 118 squat thrusts in 60 seconds.
Wow.
That's nearly 2 a second. I can't move that quick.
Thigh action.
Absolutely. His partner must be very happy.
Aye.
With this in mind, we can kind of see how we've ended up with the game Brian Jacks' Superstar Challenge. So, so we've got this kind of weird sort of multi-event thing. This was created by Joss Ellis and Gary York. Now, Joss Ellis is quite interesting, actually. He'd go on to have quite the career. He was the first European employee at EA.
Cool.
He became the director of European development, covering the release of the Bullfrog games.
Wow.
He was also covered, was behind the first FIFA game. And he was just recently director of development on Age of Empires 4.
Wow, sir.
That's quite good. Gary York was never heard of again. So.
Okay.
It's not so never mind. Anyway, onto the game. This is a multi-event waggler with a few diversions thrown in to save your arm from cramping too much. So the title screen's pretty simple, as is the tune. It's nothing to write home about, is what it is. But you can play 1 or 2 players by moving up or down on the joystick. And in a nice touch, if you move it to 2 players, it actually says 2 players. It adds the S at the end, which is something I approve of.
It does.
So you go 1 player or 2 players. I was like,
Yes.
that's nice. I like that. That's consideration. And that makes me, that made me go, yes. I nodded at that.
It's a detailer.
Yeah, I nodded, went, that's nice. Anyway, there are 8 events. The first is canoeing. And we see our 2 rowers from the side. Waggling here is the order of the day. Now, there's something called power something or other, power sinking, which means you've kind of got to speed up your waggle. I don't know. I don't know if you kind of have to do, but it is what it is. So there's power sourcing going on all the way through this. So waggling is the order of the day here for canoeing. So you have to waggle with increasing speed to get to the end of the course first. If you start to veer off course, you have to hold it slightly longer on one side, sort of put yourself back into the middle of the own thing. I never went off course, so I never had to do that. So God knows what's going on. It's quite good. Nice big chunky graphics. Seen from the side. Well animated. I quite like this. If you don't go off screen, so it's not like split screen like Summer Games 2 top down one. If you just get to the end of the screen, then the other one just sort of is at one side. And if you catch them up, then you start to move, and then they move back if you get to the right side of the screen. It's nicely done. It's all right. It's smooth. It scrolls fine. No problems here. Next up is boar shooting. Not real boars though, but pretend boars with a target on them. Looks a bit plain, this, but works fairly well. So what happens is you've got two sort of layers where the boar might appear, so one close up and one further back. And a boar, sort of a boar target, will come on from the side, and it'll have a little target somewhere on its body. You have to you'll come on one at a time from the sides and to move across the screen. You've got to line up your crosshairs of your crossbow, which is what you're firing at them, and fire at the right time. Now, you have to be sure to leave some lead time, because it takes a little bit of time for the bolt to hit the target. Nice, that is. And also, as well as you're aiming, the crossbow at the bottom follows your aim, which I was quite liking as well. Something I said, there was a game we played recently where that didn't happen, that it was annoying. Was it like 19 ripoff, or one of those combat school ripoffs that we played, where you had the gun and it just didn't follow your aim, so it didn't look good?
Yeah.
The crossbow moves left and right. Nice, good touch. Next up is the 100 meters sprint. Waggle. It's just a waggler. Get waggling. Then on to squat thrusts. And I've just nicked this from the Zzap bit, where they go, you've got to tap left twice and then right thrice in order to complete a full squat. It's like what you got to do. So it's left, right, left, right, left, right, right. And that's how you do it. You've got 60 seconds to do as many as possible. That is strangely tiring. I found that quite more tiring than the waggling, because it I don't know, but it is what it is. But it's good though. I quite like that one. Next up is swimming. You got to waggle and press fire to breathe when your head pops up. Don't breathe underwater. Bad things happen. Then you've got the parallel bars, the arm dips. Press the fire button to start to lower yourself. Then just as you touch, there's a guy stood next to you with his sort of hand up. Just as you're about to touch his arm with your chin or your arm, you have to waggle like crazy to get back to the top. Repeat. Do as many of them as you can until you fall off knackered. So which I did quite quickly. Very hard, that one. Football is up next. And here you must move around the markers on the run up to the goal. So you've got a big chunky footballer and you've got a couple of markers. Tip, if they're at the top, you've got to go over them. If they're at the bottom, you go under them. I learned that the hard way. So that's it. When the goal is reached, you get a sort of, look, you see the goal head on. So there's a goalkeeper and you're sort of facing the goal. Pick a direction, press fire to shoot. Nice and easy. In 2-player mode, the second player controls the direction the goalkeeper dives. That's quite nice. So I quite like that. So you kind of sort of trying to psych each other out as to which way you're going to shoot or dive. Finally, this is cycling. My version of the game glitched out graphically here. I don't know if yours did as well. I was, however, still able to waggle myself to the end, so I could still get through it. I just didn't qualify it because you've got to change gear, and I couldn't see the gears. I don't remember this when I used to play this back then, so I think this was just a glitch in the version we had. Didn't ruin it too much, but is what it is. And that's it. At the end, the scores are added up, and whoever has the most is declared the winner. So nice and simple. You get a nice little high score table, and then you get like you stand on, you get a not so closing ceremony, but they're on these sort of winners blocks, aren't they? They're getting the gold medal, so they're on the podium.
Yeah.
So the winner's on the podium, and then the other one's in second place. So that's quite nice. There's some nice bits to this. It takes cues, quite obviously, from things like Activision's Decathlon, Hess Games, and Hypersports, and all those games. But the big sprites and varied range of events make this, I thought this is a really pretty decent multi-event game. I really enjoyed this. I remember liking this back then and found that although a bit simple with the waggle events, there's the lack of subtlety in some of the events. The more interesting events like the boar shooting, where you've got to lead the target and things like that, squat thrusts, football, and even the arm dips provided some decent alternative action. It's a good game. I really enjoyed this. And what this showed to me was that the 64 was a great machine for these kind of games. Before the end of 1985, we had the two Decathlon games. There was a third, actually. There was a hidden Daley Thompson one. So Daley Thompson Activisions. We had this, we had Hypersports, we had Track and Field, Summer Games 1 and 2, and Winter Games, and Hess Games, all before 1985. And we've reviewed all of them, and we've liked all of them. I mean, there's not one of those we haven't thought was a good multi-event game. After that, it all went a bit alternative type games, and it's all gone a bit downhill. Even the sort of more traditional ones from Epix haven't been as good. So not quite sure what happened. We had a great series of run of these games, but then it all went tits up. Anyway, decent game list, really decent. Probably worth more than 70% got in the issue, at least for me anyway. I know it's waggle happy, but I think in multiplayer, 2 players, you'd have a bit of a laugh with this. Good fun. I enjoyed it. What did you think?
It's of its time.
Yeah.
It was all right.
Games was. Reminded me of Hess Games.
It's all right. It lacked atmosphere, and I think that's what killed it, really. Because you've got no crowd, because you've got the way things just stop. It just lacks those details that would have perhaps just finished it off, and it's those details that the Summer Games 2 games come in and put in.
Yeah.
But that said, you've got big sprites. They're well animated. The events all work. Mine glitched out twice. The football went really weird.
Oh,
and the cycling totally bugged out. Although weirdly, if you just pushed up and waggled with the top northeast and northwest across the top of the joystick, it was fine. Just I don't know what was going on with that.
Okay,
but it probably didn't do that in the actual version. There's things to like here, though. I mean, what this is a competently put together game for 1985 of this type, and there's quite a lot of events. It surprised me how many events there were actually.
Single load as well.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the rowing in it. The rowing was good. Shooting was okay. 100 meters. A lot of these waggling ones are, you really, no wonder joystick sales were through the roof at this point in 1985.
Yeah, absolutely.
The squat thrusts was, left, right, left 3, right 3. It's exhausting. Swimming was good. Yeah, it's taking all of its influences, from all the different arcade, principally the hyper sport type games and the track and field sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that though, and it's not doing a bad old job. Does it have the spit and polish of a hyper sports or of a Summer Games 2? No, it doesn't. It is very much like the Hess Games sort of tradition with the bigger animations, although and is it perhaps just a little bit on the simple side, really? Yes, it is, but it's part of the genus of those games. There's plenty to go at. You'd have enjoyed it had you had this, and with a couple of with your mates, if you could have afforded 2 joysticks, but you'd have enjoyed it. I think it was a good start to finish multi-event game, and it did what it set out to do. And you got a medal ceremony at the end, so it didn't just quit. You did actually get through, and it did calculate the winners of all the events and go through that. And you would go through it again, and you try and beat each other. And I can see there being a lot of fun to be had. It's not dated so well, but considering when it was made and who it was made by, a couple of people, not bad at all, really. I quite enjoyed it. Not a game I remember much of back in the day. I remember more about Brian Jacks, obviously, but I don't remember much about this game, although it's something that seems to have popped up now and again. Anyway, I played this. I enjoyed it. Bugs aside, even with those bugs, it was still way better than Almazz. So
it's not hard.
I enjoyed it for what it was. But you're right, actually. These multi-event games, they've always been a strength, haven't they? And this just proves it. Even with bugs and with maybe some of the atmosphere missing, it's still pretty damn good. So, and the later ones, they did come along and ruin it a bit, and they'll try.
Yeah, wall jumping.
Yeah, just say that. Yeah, exactly. Now, would I prefer, the parts of this game? I think the events are more interesting and it's more difficult and more challenging than something like California Games, which comes much later and has lots more bangs and crashes and whistles and whoops. No, you don't need all of that. What you need is instantly accessible controls and the ability to try and do better, slightly better than you may at any given opportunity. And you're going to have a lot of fun with this. You should not have to fight the game to play it. You should just be able to pick it up and go. And that's what you did do. So good old Brian Jacks. Turns out he's good at this as well. Bloody hell.
I know, he's good at everything. Good at everything. He never won Superstars, though.
No, and do you know what? When he found that out, that once they'd cancelled that show, he picked up the director of the show's car and threw it into space. Still there. That's how angry he was.
He's on his way to fight the Gapless.
Exactly. And then he went to his back garden and the neighbours kicked the football over and he kicked that into space out of anger as well. Just a lot of stuff he did end up in space.
And then he got down sort of thing and started doing squat thrusts and went all the way through the Earth, ended up in Australia.
he altered the orbit of the Earth like in Superman.
He's doing squat thrusted the Earth backwards. He's that powerful.
It is forbidden for you to interfere in human history.
Oh, Brian Jacks, I can squat thrust the Earth backwards. You can't stop me, Zod.
Squat thrusted through time. Somebody had to do it. May as well have been him.
Absolutely. We never know what that timeline was like, and because of Brian Jacks interfering with it. But
exactly. We'll never know.
We'll never know. But I just checked wikis. I just checked the wiki. Actually, he says he won Superstars. I'm sure he didn't earlier on today.
Just squat thrusted something. Yeah. That slight thunderous sound you can hear is him rapidly beating the earth into another spin cycle.
Good old Brian.
So that's why we don't have to worry about asteroids hitting the earth, because he'd just kick them back into space.
Well, he would, yeah. Just squat thrust them. Just point his ass at them, pull his legs forward, ping them back.
Exactly. Just kick them into the sun.
He's got thighs that could crack neutrons.
Exactly. Well, they do. How do you think they split the atom?
Between his thighs.
Yeah, it's exactly how it was discovered. Never mind all the Einstein theorising. He just went in, give me that atom here.
Absolutely. he's found the Brian Jacks particle. It's a large Brian Jacks collider.
Oh, there should be both of those things should exist. There should be a Brian Jacks particle, and it should be colliding in the Brian Jacks collider, which is just two massive thighs. Just does a massive squat thrust and pushes the particles together that way.
Someone sat there going, left twice, right thrice, left twice, right thrice, to crack the particles apart.
The idea of a large Brian Jacks collider, that's going to keep me in giggles and laughs for quite some time, I can tell you now.
There you go. Oh, well. And that's on that cracking neutrons point. That's it. We've done 6 of the old games. We said we'd go back to these. We're doing it. We're doing them. We're getting through them slowly. We hope you've liked this little sojourn back to the past. We've still got a few more. I mean, how many we've done so far? 14. I think we're about 30 we need to look at. So expect a few more of these little
we'll sneakily episodes. Drop them in when you least expect it.
Absolutely, because we like doing that.
And if you don't like it, we'll get Brian Jacks to kick the earth back in time and we'll do it again.
And you will like it. Because if you don't, we'll keep doing it. He gets no older. Every time he goes back, he gets young again. It's like the man himself.
Oh, dear.
So there you go. That's it. That's the 6 more of those original games from those early issues of Zzap that we missed at the time because, we didn't really know what we were doing. But, there you go. Normal service will be resumed next week, where episode 113 will come in as we get going into February 1989. It is I think last week I said that it was going to be a 2-parter, but it's actually not. It's a 3-parter. So coming up in episode 113, we get back to normal service. We'll be looking at games like Total Eclipse, Blip, Video Classics, Exploding Fist Plus, Rambo 3, Ocean Conqueror, and Gaplus. So this has been fun. It's been a usual thing. We hope you've enjoyed it. It's a bit of a different sojourn. We're on a bit of a break. I know we've only had 2 episodes where we've gone into 1989, but it is what it is. People have holidays. But here you go. You've had something for the week. And anything you want to add about these old games, Graham?
No, I mean, it's always nice to come across a surprise. Joel jokes aside about, and I wouldn't dare crack a joke about Brian Jacks anyway, because he can literally kick you into space.
Crack your head like a walnut between his thighs.
Well, yeah. Well, he just his eyelids do that. He can actually crack walnut with his eyelids. Just puts them in the. She's unnerving at best. No, I've been surprised actually. A lot of the good games. There's only been really one stinker, hasn't there? And that's weirdly, Zzap seems to think it was great, but there was one stinker amongst the 6 that we've looked at. And the others, there's been some nice little titles in there, things like Seaside Special and stuff like that. Been quite good. So. Yeah, good. It just shows you, though, again, that some of these early games, the formulas, they may not have had all the code chops, but the formulas weren't that far off, were they? So,
well, they just made games. They were games rather than trying to be these whatever. They're just games.
Overcomplicating it, you see.
Yeah, very much so. Brian Jacks can power lift with his ears as well.
Careful. Don't upset him, for God's sake. The last person who did that can breathe okay as long as no one unplugs him.
That's true. That is very true. Anyway, there you go. We'll be back next week with
Brian Jacks Blade Runner.
There's a turtle on the floor. It's on its back. What are you doing? I'd squat thrust it into space. What?
It's a replicant. Sorry, he's a replicorn. What do we call these? I can't remember what we call them now.
Replicant. Repli can't, Repli don't.
Repli don't. What did they call Repli-droid? It's a Repli-droid. Get it? It's a Repli-droid.
Why would you do that, Brian? I'd squat thrust anything into space given out a chance. And then I'd arm dip it.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, on that note, we'll be back next week. Normal service will be resumed. I have been Adrian Mills.
I have been Graham Raddings.
And you have been listening to Zap to the Past Goes Back to the Past Retro Special number 2, I guess. And we'll see you again next week. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Zap to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zap to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zaptothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zaptothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapTother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zap to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zap to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zap to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.